Good afternoon, and welcome to our Professional Services Contracts Demystified webinar. We're happy to welcome you here today for a discussion about two of our most popular professional services contracts, PRF 70, Advertising, Marketing, and Event Planning Services, and PRF 75, Foreign Language Interpretation and Translation Services. But before we begin the presentation, I do have a few housekeeping items to share with you. First, if you're experiencing any audio issues, click Audio in the control panel and select the phone call option to receive dial-in information. All participants will be muted during today's session, and hand raising has been disabled as well. There'll be a 15-minute question and answer period following the last presenter. Please click on the Questions tab in the control panel to enter your question. We'll try to get to as many questions as time allows, and you can enter your question anytime during today's presentation. A copy of this presentation and a few additional resources, including the statewide contract reference sheet, are available in the GoToWebinar control panel under the Handouts tab. Simply click on any handout to access and save a copy. Next slide, please. My name is Jennifer Forsey, and I'm joined today by my associates from the local government team, Patricia Burke and Jackie Needham, as well as Anne Maria Bennett and Marge McEvitt from the strategic sourcing team. Next slide. Today we'll be reviewing PRF 70, Advertising, Marketing, and Events Planning Services, and PRF 75, Foreign Language Interpretation and Translation Services. We'll be covering why we chose to spotlight these professional services contracts, an overview of both PRF 70 and 75 contracts, including what's covered in these contracts, as well as contract exclusions. We'll discuss the benefits of using statewide contracts, as well as the statewide contract index. And we'll also talk about partnering with your local government team. Then there'll be a 15-minute question and answer period, as I mentioned earlier. We will conclude today's session with a survey. We've posted a link to the survey in the chat. It should only take 1 minute to complete 5 short questions. Please take a moment to send us your feedback about today's presentation, but not only that, we'd also appreciate any thoughts or ideas you have about future OSD webinars. Now let me turn it over to my colleague, Jackie Needham, to provide background information on our PRF contract services.
Thank you, Jen. Hello, everyone. I am Jackie Needham, and it is wonderful to welcome almost 100 attendees to today's webinar, an impressive audience. Thank you for being here. I would like to start by first explaining how the local government team decided to produce this webinar series on professional services contracts. Last year alone, $131 million was spent on professional services contracts. However, less than 10% was procured by municipalities. The local government team got together and brainstormed as to why this might be. We concluded the reasons contracts were underutilized by municipalities might be because the municipalities were unaware of the contract's existence, the possible lack of understanding of what was available on the contracts, and a possible general uncertainty of how to use the contracts. Today's webinar is our efforts to clarify the wide range of options and services available under our contracts for your use. It is our goal today to empower you with an increased knowledge and understanding of these contracts and to assist you in leveraging OSD resources to help ensure successful procurements. Next slide. Today we are highlighting PRF 70 and PRF 75. In selecting PRF 70, we looked at spend analysis, open market posting, and buyer feedback. And we found the following. Municipalities posted 104 open market bids in 2022. Using the keywords advertising, marketing, and event planning, we concluded that many of these services were available through statewide contracts, but only 2 municipalities took advantage of the PRF 70 contract. However, on a much more successful note, we were pleased to determine that in FY22, 2/3 of all municipal spends on the PRF contracts was for PRF 75, Foreign Language Interpretation and Translation Services. A tremendous opportunity to expand and promote its benefits. Next slide. It is always important to remember OSD statewide contracts are actively managed and comply with 30B. They will save you time of a costly procurement. We offer a comprehensive selections of goods and services, all with competitive pricing and additional pre-negotiated benefits. Next slide. After today's presentation, you will leave with a greater understanding of the services available to fill your community's needs. The procurements are done. Vendors are ready to share their expertise and solutions to meet your needs. Be confident OSD and the local government team will support your efforts when utilizing these contracts. And now I'd like to pass it on to Trish Burke for a little pop quiz. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Hello and welcome, everyone. Well, before moving on to our first presentation, here is the pop quiz that Jackie mentioned in the form of a poll question. So as you can see here, which option best describes the services that are available through PRF 70? Development of a communication strategy, handle public relations matters, event advisory services, web development, or all of the above? If you would, please select your response now. Here we go. Excellent, all of the above. So for those of you who selected all of the above, you would be correct. And after today's presentation, we encourage you to review the extensive offerings contained in this contract and consider the skilled companies available to hire in order to develop your next advertising, marketing, and event. So at this time, it's my pleasure to turn the presentation back over to our sourcing friends. Here today is Anne Maria Bennett. Anne Maria?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Trish. Welcome to everybody to this second part of our PRF series. And this afternoon, I will be talking with us about the offerings under PRF 70, and that's our contract for advertising, marketing, and event planning services. So PRF 70, as a general overview, it started in September of 2020, and it will continue for 5 years through to the end of August of 2025. So there are no options for renewal. It's just one 5-year term contract. And then after August, they will be replaced by a brand new contract. So PRF 70 currently has 5 categories, which I'll talk about in subsequent slides. One of the features of this contract is that it has ceiling prices. So each vendor has produced for us their rates, and these can all be found in Combis under the master record. These ceiling rates will serve as a guide for you, but always remember that there is the opportunity for negotiation once you're engaging those vendors. And there are also opportunities for additional discounts, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on. PRF 70 also has multiple vendors per each category, and these vendors include those who are certified by the Supplier Diversity Office and who are also certified as small business vendors. So we talk about the categories, and I mentioned that there are 5. And I'll just briefly tell you what these are, and then we'll go into detail of each in turn. So category 1 is all things social media, all things web-based. Category 2 is the creative services category, so it deals with all your creative services. Category 3 is where you would go for anything marketing, brand development, anything advertising or public relations related. Category 4 deals with your events. So whether you need a full-blown planning of an event or you just need support for an event that you've already planned, whether your event is going to be virtual or it's going to be in person, then category 4 is where you would go to find support for all those needs. And then category 5 we call our integrated marketing services, which simply means that it has elements of categories 1 through to 4. And so category 1, web-based social and emerging media is the name of the category. And as I said before, it deals with everything social media, everything web-based. So this involves any kind of evolving methods of media production, media delivery, media consumption. This is the category to go to. The vendors on this category, they are very experienced and they are experts in this field. There is also the online marketing, when you want to make sure that your email marketing messages are targeted to the right audience. When you want to structure those messages to have the best impact, then you can get your support right here. When you talk about social media, when you want to develop your website, if you already have a website and you just want it, to enhance it, maybe to make it easier to use, stuff like that, then vendors are able to assist you here as well. And then if there are any other kind of emerging methods that you may think of in the social media space, then these vendors will be able to brainstorm that with you and to provide you guidance or support as your needs are. And the internet or similar electronic media services, social networks, for example, Instagram, LinkedIn, if you want to get into podcasts or blogs, microblogging under Twitter. I know a lot of agencies and departments and functions put out information on YouTube, maybe videos, maybe training stuff, maybe just informational videos on YouTube. Then this is the category to go to for that service as well. And then anything mobile and location-based platforms, for example, Foursquare, anything that has to do with development, preparation, promotion, or distribution of that kind of material is supported by vendors under category 1. So just in summary, like I said before, anything, once you think social media, once you think anything web-based, internet-related, then by all means go to category 1 for your support. And then category 2 deals with the creative side of us. It deals with the arts, it deals with graphic designs, it deals with photography, and you want to produce your videos, then these are the vendors. And one of the things about category 2 that we paid particular attention to when we were developing this new contract is that we wanted not only large companies who could do these kinds of mass productions, but we also wanted small niche companies, sole proprietors, independent persons who could also provide us with really high quality. Maybe this is the only thing that they do. Photographer, for example, the only thing they do, they can really focus and provide us with that kind of cutting edge service that we need. So if you want to develop your images, if you want to get advice on any kind of patterns you may already have, any kind of graphic ideas that you want to further expand on, that you're going to print eventually, or you're going to turn into an advertising, then these vendors are able to help you. You want to make sure that the history of your event, for example, is preserved through photography. Then you can find a vendor on this category who will be able to preserve that history for you through their photography skills. Anything from taking the pictures to developing the pictures, whether you want it digitally, whether you want it hard copy, the whole spectrum of services as it relates to photography. And then if you wanted assistance with developing a video for TV, or if you wanted to develop a video for training or just some other kind of public awareness, then these vendors will also be able to help you. So not only are they able to help you to develop, but they're also able to help you to create the content. Let's say you just have an idea, but you needed some help in expanding that idea to take it from a concept to reality, then these vendors are also creatively able to help you to get to that place. And then these vendors, they're also project managers. They understand the industry in which they are. They understand that they will be responsible, if that's the scope of your project, for the entire management of the project. So everything from developing the content. For example, you're doing a video, everything from developing the script, finding the talent, developing the content, finding the location, doing the filming and the editing. You are able to be there with them to see, the proofs, to see the drafts, to say, okay, this is not quite what I want, or I want it to be more like this. The entire management of that process and that project, they are able to undertake as well. So if you think creative, if you think arts, if you think video, graphics, commercial photography, then please, by all means, go to category 2. And then category 3 deals with everything marketing services related. So you want to develop your brand, you want to get a focus group together to talk about, some of the ways in which you can improve your presence. For example, the vendors in category 3 are able to assist you with that. If you wanted to run a campaign, in the media, they are able to assist you with that. If you wanted to do any kind of ad, develop any kind of ads, maybe you wanted to do a billboard in your town, or maybe there's something going on, or something that's about to happen that you want to make sure that the constituents are aware of, and you need some help in presenting that message to the constituents, then category 3 vendors are able to assist you with that. And not only do they help you with your marketing and your advertising needs, but they also help you with your public relations needs. So if you needed to have, a town hall meeting to discuss or to present information on something that's going on, maybe something controversial in your town, or maybe something that's sensitive, maybe something that's health related, anything like that, you need to be able to communicate well to the constituents. You need to be able to communicate clearly and completely, making sure that the message is conveyed based on how you intended it to. Then these vendors are certainly able to help you with that PR plan, with that presence, how to make sure that you are sensitive to public attitudes and that kind of thing. So think the full range of marketing services, think brand presence, think TV, think radio, think being in person, presenting a message to a group of people, or to some other focus groups. Then you think category 3, and those vendors will be able to assist you. And then category 4 is where you would go for all your event support. So I mentioned before that these vendors not only help you to plan, but if you already have the planning done, you know exactly what you want, you have people who are very good planners, who are able to put it all together, but you just needed that kind of expertise to support you on the day of the event. So you wanted some experts to show up to ensure that everything ran according to your plan. Then vendors under this category are also able to assist you with that. They, of course, are able to assist you with the entire planning of your event if that's what you choose to do. So they can do trade shows, conferences, they do workshops, they do conventions, any kind of event that you're thinking about. If you're doing like a community event, maybe you want to recognize, something historic in your community. Maybe you wanted to do something special for the elderly, or whatever it is. think event, and these vendors are able to assist you. And the event doesn't have to be in person, it can also be virtual. They also bring their expertise to the virtual space. And then the final category is category 5, which is a combination of all categories 1 to 4. So the intention with creating a category 5 is, if you have a campaign, let's say, that's going to cover all the elements that I just spoke about, then instead of having you go to each category individually to negotiate with vendors and to have the conversations and to present your ideas and so on, you could just go straight to category 5, and you will find vendors here that are able to support you all the way through 1 to 4. So those are the 5 categories. And just in summary on the categories, think anything you can think of that relates to social media, anything that you can think of that relates to your brand presence, developing your strategy for marketing a concept or an idea or an event, anything that you can think of that you want to be creative, where you want to have somebody to help you with your photography or your video production, anything that you can think of that touches on any of these elements, then by all means, please go to PRF 70, because you will undoubtedly find vendors there who are able to support you. And some of the additional benefits of using this contract. So the documents that are going to be very useful for you, they're all located in one central area in Combis. So you would just need to go to the master record, and all the information is there. This contract, like I mentioned before, has a number of small businesses, and not only do we have small businesses, but we do also have large businesses who are able to take on those full-scale events, like, for example, those category 5 vendors who are able to do everything in 1 through to 4. And we have vendors with local as well as national presence. For those that, it's important, you want to support, let's say, Massachusetts-based businesses, then these vendors are also here on this contract. And the ceiling rates I mentioned before, they can always be further negotiated for additional savings. And additional discounts are also offered by vendors. So some of these vendors are able to take advantage of industry discounts. They may be able to negotiate with media houses, for example, for rate breaks in their rates. They're not only working for the Commonwealth, they're working for other agencies as well. So because of their presence in the industry, these vendors are able to negotiate for better rates for media placements, let's say, and so they're able to pass these on to us. And something I should have mentioned when I was talking about category 3 is that the vendors, they will negotiate on our behalf for media buys. So we don't have to get involved. And when I say we, I mean, like, buyers who are here, you do not have to get involved in negotiating, for example, with the media houses for space or for time or anything like that. These vendors are able to do that for you, and then they would just do a pass-through cost without markup of whatever rates they were able to negotiate with these media houses. Next slide, please. And then as it relates to diversity, so this contract has 39 vendors, and of that 39, 5 are minority-owned businesses, 13 are women-owned, 1 is from the LGBTQ sector of the diverse suppliers, and then there are 10 that are certified small Massachusetts businesses. So lots of diversity under this contract. It will help you to meet your diversity goals and targets in your own towns, municipalities, in your own procurement processes. Next slide, please. And so this is just a recap of stuff that I said before. When would you need marketing expertise? When are some of those moments that you could come to PRF 70 and be totally satisfied? When you're planning an in-person or virtual event, I mentioned that before. If you needed expertise or even tools to produce a video. You want to produce the video on your own. You have the idea, you have the concept, but you just need some tools. You just need some equipment to do a really good job. Then if that's all you need, then you are able to get that from PRF70. If you wanted to redesign your website to accommodate ease of use, to increase your presence, this is the contract to come to. If you wanted to introduce new social media channels, then by all means use PRF70. If you wanted some guidance on how to handle some public relations matters, maybe something that's sensitive going on in your area, you just need guidance. You know how to write your speeches, you know how to do your delivery, but you just need some guidance on how to go about doing it. Then you can get that guidance right here. And they will also, vendors under this contract can also help you with a comprehensive communication strategy. If you want to publicize any new projects or initiatives in your towns, these vendors are able to assist. And I mentioned about photography and updating your brand as well. So the contract user guide you'll find very, very useful. It is also found in Combis. It gives you a lot more details on what the contract covers. It gives you information on how to purchase from the contract. What are some of the ways you can benefit from purchasing from this contract? It tells you what the exclusions are. One of them is, for example, this contract does not cover the renting of venues. So for your events that you may want to plan, whilst you will find vendors who are able to help you with the planning and the execution, you would have to identify the venue within your own teams. The contract user guide also gives you information on the pricing. As I mentioned some of it before, it gives you more information on that and the quote requirements. And you will find information on the vendors that are awarded. So it tells you the names and the names of the contact and their contact information. And it also tells you which categories these vendors have been awarded. So very, very useful tool as you navigate the use of PRF70. And then, as I wrap up, this is just a list of the 39 vendors who are on the contract. Some of them, if you can scan through this list, some of them you will identify. Maybe some of them you didn't realize were on the contract, but they're here. So feel free at any time to reach out to them through PRF70. Once you mention that you're reaching out through PRF70, then all of a sudden, your rates will look different, the scope of the services will look different, and different in this case, obviously, it means more advantageous because the contract that is set up is really intended to be of benefit to you. So I encourage each one of you to explore it a little bit more. There's a lot that it has to offer. And if you have any questions, the contract user guide also provides you with information on your contract manager. And that contract manager is more than willing and able to guide you further as you use this contract. So thank you. And I think I'll turn it over now to Trish.
Hello again, and thank you, Anne Maria. That was a great presentation. And for the second poll question this afternoon, I'd like to ask each one of you, when thinking about PRF 75, how many languages would you approximate are supported by this contract? Would you estimate more than 100? Excuse me, 50 to 100, more than 100, or more than 200 languages? If you could log your response now. Wow, okay, well, thank you very much. For those of you who selected more than 200 languages, you would be correct. And to tell you more about the contract, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Marge McKevitt from the Strategic Sourcing Unit to present PRF 75, the OSD Foreign Language Interpretation and Translation Services Contract. Marge?
Thank you, Trish. And I'd also like to thank all of you for attending the presentation. I'm hoping that this is going to give you some useful information. Next slide, please. Okay, so the PRF Foreign Language Interpretation and Translation Services Contract Overview. Like many of the PRF contracts, this covers 4 different categories: in-person interpretation, translation, telephonic interpretation, and video remote interpretation. There will be more about each of those later. This replaces PRF 63, which expired in June of 2021. And the current contract term goes through June 30, 2024, but we do have renewal options for going out to 2026. So this contract will be around for a while, and there are 40 vendors across the 4 different categories. Next slide. Thank you. All right, so in-person interpretation. This is oral face-to-face interpretation. It's the process of understanding, analyzing, and transforming a spoken message and accurately rendering it into another spoken language. So the interpreters must be able to convey the meaning from one language to another in a culturally appropriate manner and in an appropriate to the setting that they're operating in. Under this contract, obviously, you have to schedule the services in advance. The billing is based on all-inclusive hourly rates. There's a minimum time under the contract that you can book for 1 hour, or you can book for 2 hours. And the billing for over 2 hours is in 15-minute increments. Generally, you'll find that the hourly rate is lower for the longer engagements. And there are higher rates if you need to have services on an expedited basis. This does not include simultaneous interpretation or American Sign Language. I'll explain later about how you go about getting those. And there are 22 vendors in the in-person interpretation category. Next slide. So translation. Translation deals with the written word, converting text from a source language into a target language. The translation also needs to convey the style, tone, and intent of the text and account for differences in culture and dialects. The finished document should read as if it had originally been written in the target language for the target audience. So this is, there is Google Translate. This is not Google Translate. If any of you have used it, it can work fine for conveying some fairly simple concepts, but it generally does not sound like a person whose native language that was speaking. Contractors need to be able to receive documents by fax, email, or other electronic means in a format like standard word processing formats or PDFs, or they can take physical delivery by mail or by a courier. The rates for this category are by word rather than by hour. And those, of course, are shown in the cost tables for each vendor under the master contract record. Most vendors offer volume discounts. And again, with this category, if you need an expedited service, there may be a higher rate for that. This category has 35 vendors. Next slide. So telephonic interpretation includes both scheduled and unscheduled telephonic interpretation services for non-English speaking individuals. It's available 24/7. You do need to have an agreement established in advance for either type of service. The vendor handles this service through a dedicated toll-free number to access interpretation services, and all the costs for the toll-free access are borne by the contractor. So this is, again, an all-inclusive rate. The vendors will respond to incoming calls and requests for services with an average of 25 seconds to speak to a live agent, and 5 seconds for an automated voice system that will relay you to an agent. The average monthly connection time is 30 minutes or less to interpret for all languages provided. All-inclusive maximum rates are per minute. Most vendors offer volume discounts or monthly call volume rates. There are 29 vendors in this category. So this is the category that we would use if you were a police department or a hospital, or basically offer any services that would require you to be speaking with and understanding someone who does not communicate in English. Many contract users set up agreements with a number of different vendors, just so that they can be sure of having access when they need it, possibly for languages that are rather uncommon. Next slide, please. And this is the video remote interpretation category. Similar to in-person translation, really, except it's being done over the computer. These need to be scheduled in advance and can take place in a variety of settings. The vendors will use the software or other tools per your instructions to carry out the services. And here again, we have all-inclusive maximum rates. These are per minute rather than hourly, as in the face-to-face translation. Most vendors offer a volume discount based on the monthly call volume, and there are 25 vendors in this category. Next slide, please. So benefits and competitive advantages. Well, we have a pool of 40 vendors who are qualified and experienced in the services under which they've been awarded. There are 240 languages covered. In some cases, languages spoken by as few as 20,000 people. So you're pretty unlikely to run across a language that is not supported by one of these vendors. The vendors have maximum rates for each service, and as with BRF 70, buyers are encouraged to negotiate lower rates than the maximum. The translation negotiation rates include delivery of the final products and services, including all development, editing, and finalization, and the rates for the in-person interpretation includes any travel costs or overhead, overtime as applicable to the category. So the rates that you will find in the cost tables are all inclusive for the services that you will be getting. And all of these vendors offer prompt pay discounts. Next slide, please. Okay, so the exclusions. I said at the beginning I would talk about what's excluded. American Sign Language is not covered under PRF 75. These services are available through the Massachusetts Commission for the Deaf and Hard Hearing, and there is a link below that will provide you with access to that contract. Simultaneous interpretation refers to the type of interpretation where the interpreter speaks along with the speaker, but lags a little bit behind them. That's the kind of interpretation that you would see if you're watching a UN event where there's one speaker and generally 5 or so simultaneous interpreters who are speaking into the headphones that the audience wears in order to hear the language of their choice. This is a much more demanding form of interpretation than the type of interpretation provided under Category 1, face-to-face interpretation. With the Category 1, generally the speaker completes a sentence or maybe a short thought that is then translated by the interpreter into the target language. With simultaneous interpretation, there are often 2 different simultaneous interpreters working together so that they can kind of spell each other and take turns, get a break. With some languages that, for example, languages that include the verb at the end of the sentence, this is even more challenging because the interpreter has to kind of anticipate what's going to happen, or in some cases, there may be a pause for up to 30 seconds until the sentence can actually be interpreted. So this is not covered under the contract, and you would need to procure that type of service on your own if it's something that you need for an event. Next slide, please. Diverse and small business purchasing opportunities. As you see from the chart, well, we have 40 contractors in total. There are 5 minority-owned business enterprises and 10 women-owned, and 7 Massachusetts-based small businesses. Next slide, please. So how you buy from the contract. All engagements require that you solicit multiple quotes except in emergencies. Combis is set up by categories to make it easy for Combis users to request multiple quotes from the vendors in just that one category they're interested in. But if you don't use Combis, you can solicit quotes using the contact information found in the vendor list and information table in the contract user guide, which also tells you which category each vendor covers and includes the email addresses and telephone numbers that you can use for soliciting quotes. Before you begin an engagement, you need to execute a statement of work, and there is a template on Combis that will help you to set up a statement of work. This is not, a great huge thing that's 5 pages to complete. It's merely establishing the parameters for each engagement, like the date and time for in-person and other scheduled engagements, and of course, which languages are going to be used, and any other aspects that the vendor needs to be aware of to perform the services. Next slide, please. You will find contract information on Combis. You don't need a login. You just go to the combis.com. you'll see a drop-down box. You select blankets, and you just overtype the word search with PRF 75 and click the magnifying glass. Now, when you do this, you'll see a number of different entries. Some of the vendors, instead of seeing a vendor name, you'll see solicitation enabled. Those are the contracts that help Combise users to request quotes. The information that you need to use the contract as a whole is found under the master contract record. That the one master contract record includes a spreadsheet that will show you pricing for all of the vendors on the contract, and you get to that just by clicking the special link that's included on this slide that will take you directly to the master contract record. And the contract user guide itself, of course, also has links to the master contract record. Next slide, please. Oh, and there is the contract user guide. This has additional details on contract coverage, how to purchase, contract exclusions, which we've mentioned already, pricing and quote requirements, and additional awarded contract information. Next slide, please. And here they are. These are the 40 vendors that are awarded under PRF 75. And I'm not going to read this slide to you, so don't worry about that. But you may recognize some of the names of the companies, and there they all are. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn this presentation over to Jennifer, who is going to explain to you how to use the context, the statewide contracts index keyword search to find the contract you're looking for. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be around in the question and answer session. Thanks.
Thank you, Marge. Something we hear quite often in the local government team is from our municipal clients, how can I find what I'm looking for on a statewide contract? We have a number of dedicated resources, beginning with the statewide contract reference sheet and the contract user guides, as Anne Maria and Marge just discussed, and I'm sure many of you are already familiar with. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the statewide contract index keyword search that we have as well, where you can access any services or items by using keywords in this reference tool. And we do have attached a link to a 6-minute video that essentially highlights how you can access this tool and utilize it to your benefit. And as always, you have the help desk and your local government team. Next slide, please. Before we move on to the question and answer period, just a reminder that if you missed the first professional services contracts webinar that was held 2 weeks ago, you can still access a copy of the slides as well as recording on the local government resource page. And this is where we covered PRF 69, facilities engineering services, and PRF 76, management consultants, program coordinators, and planner services. Next slide. I would like to reiterate that the local government team, as always, is here to support you. And if you do have additional questions going forward, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're committed to working with every municipal organization throughout the state, whether we're answering your contract and procurement questions or simply setting up custom training classes for you and your team to become more proficient in using the Combise e-procurement system. Now I'd like to hand it over to Miriam Stein, who will moderate the question and answer period for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. And thanks to all our presenters, and thanks to our audience for joining us today. Before we get to the Q&A portion of our program, I want to point our participants to the chat tab in the control panel. We've posted a link to a 2-minute max survey to collect your thoughts about today's presentation and to get your ideas for future webcasts. Please click on the link to open the survey in your browser and take a moment to share your feedback. We really appreciate your thoughts and ideas. Now on to our questions. And we do have a couple of questions so far. And Marge, they're both for you. First from Christian, he was asking about simultaneous interpretation. And then you went on to explain that that's currently an exclusion on the contract. However, he said that this has come up a number of times for their organization and was wondering, and actually someone else also posted a question, wondering whether or not it might be added at a later point in time. Marge, I'm thinking maybe you are muted.
No kidding, Miriam. Thank you. Whenever we put together a new procurement, or even at the time when we're renewing a contract, we put together a group of folks who are contract users to form the strategic sourcing team, and that's the group that really figures out what's going to be covered in an upcoming contract or what may be needed, even in a renewal. It's also possible that contracts have been known to add services and add categories over the life of the contract. So if you are someone who needs simultaneous interpretation as part of what you do, you're welcome to send me an email, and I will keep track of those and, perhaps raise those as an issue with the current strategic sourcing team to perhaps be something that we would consider adding at some point. I don't know, Anne Maria, if you were familiar with the deliberations the first time around, but if you have anything to add to that, please chime in. And you're muted.
Maria, you're also on mute.
I thought I came off mute. Yeah, I was just saying that you're correct, Marge. It is something that if the need is apparent and if the need it's there, then it's always something that the team will consider.
So interestingly, Christian points out that because they had need for these simultaneous interpretation services, they reached out to one of our PRF 75 vendors and were actually able to acquire this service. Do either of you have thoughts on that or how other users might proceed?
I know there will be vendors on the contract that will provide services that are outside of the scope of the contract. So it's not unusual that you're able to get it. And as Marge mentioned, there probably isn't a language or in this case, a derivative of the service that you're looking for that you will not be able to find from vendors on the contract. So I'm not surprised that you're able to, but just at this moment, it's not current. The simultaneous interpretation is not currently covered under the scope of PRF 70.
That's a very good point, Miriam, and I'm glad the questioner raised it because when I said you were kind of on your own for finding those simultaneous interpretation services, that contract might be a very good place to look. So thank you for...
We do have another user, a third, that's chimed in about their need for that. So just good information from our buyer community. And we seem to have someone who will want to serve on our sourcing team. So we'll take note of this person who wants to help us for our future procurement of the replacement contract. We do have another PRF 75 question. For interpretation provided through Zoom meetings, should they go through category 1 or 4?
Zoom would be the video video interpretation. So that would be category 4.
Okay, thank you. Shawnee is asking if there is an annual maximum for PRF 75 for each solicitation.
No.
Okay. That is all the questions I'm seeing. Before we end, I just want, and just in case there are any additional questions over the minute or so that we have remaining, as a reminder, our participants can select the handouts tab in the control panel to download a copy of today's presentation slides. We also have available the PRF 70 and PRF 75 contract user guides, as well as the latest statewide contract reference sheet. That's a 2-sided one-pager that summarizes all of our statewide contracts. Just going to take a peek to see if there are any additional questions, and I'm not seeing them at this juncture, but there is information to contact us should you have questions in the future. And Jen, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Miriam. In addition, and by the way, thank you to all participants for today and our presenters as well. In addition to the local government team support, OSD has a fully staffed help desk available during normal business hours to support all your efforts. And we're also social on multiple platforms, and we encourage you to stay connected. Next slide. On behalf of the strategic sourcing and the local government team and all of us at OSD, we want to thank you all for attending today's professional services presentation. We hope you found today's session helpful and informative. And as we mentioned, the webinar will stay open just for a few minutes to allow you to complete the survey in the chat. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.